What's going on, y'all? It's another episode of Dot Connect Wednesdays. We in the building today. Our topic is Love and Astrology, the family unit rooted in love and business. We got a extremely special guest in the building. Mira, what's going on? Ms. Bayonne.
Hey,
My
hey.
guy, my guy Steve. Thank you for coming on, blessing us.
Appreciate that. All right, so listen, you guys, you know of me already, and you know the background. So, and some of you might have met my wife. She jumped on a call or two in the past. So just a little backstory. This is going on. What are we at? 21 total.
21 and a half. The half matters.
21 and a half years together. Married for where we at? 13.
Yeah, I think 13 or 14. We were married in 2008.
Yeah, you kind of lose track a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is the classic love story, right? Undergrad, college. I'll be quick with it. Mira had a class exiting when I had a class beginning in undergrad. So I was the type to just roll out of bed and just go straight to class if I made it to class half the time for my morning situations. So this is one of the only classes that I scheduled during the morning, right? So I keep my schedule extremely light at the school. We didn't have class on Friday, so you tend to make your schedule like Tuesday, Thursdays, and have long weekends, right? So this is how I was playing the game up there in college. So we're in Rhode Island now, just so you understand the backdrop of this. Mira's coming from North Carolina, and I'm coming from Connecticut at the time. Well, Massachusetts on a transfer, right? This is her first year, and I'm transferring in, so I've been there already. So she catches, so as I'm entering class, she's leaving, and she catches my eye, right? She's probably not paying any mind to me at this point. So I'm like, okay, bet. I'm getting dressed tomorrow morning, right? So, rolling out of bed, do-rag, sweats, you can get dressed on the next come up, and then by lunch, all things have been settled, right? So I'm like, I didn't present well. So I start dressing up every single morning, bright-eyed, just so I can catch her, right, on the movement. Fast forward to when we finally do make the connection, she was like, she had more of an appreciation for the do-rag and Sean John sweats actually dressing. And the only reason I thought that she would appreciate the dressing is because this girl was dressing to the T every single day, right? So I figured she would have an appreciation for that, but not realizing that she liked it.
I'm from Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Right.
Straight Wu-Tang. I wanted the Timbs and all that back then. I'm 19.
Right. So, going back and forth to class, I didn't make any connection with her in that particular area, just clocking her movements and understanding, when her next class is, where she's moving. And I can remember just kind of running into her in between class and then offered to walk her to class and X, Y, Z and ask for the number. At this point, she throws out a phone number, not expecting me to really remember it, right? Because these are the times where I don't even know. We did have it might have been like two-way pagers at the time. So it wasn't, cell phone, or it wasn't social media dominant at the point. So when she throws his number out, but she is not understanding that I am a wizard with numbers, right? Like, you can give me a pattern of numbers and I can remember them just by seeing them. So I never forgot the number, and I kept calling. This girl would not answer the phone at all, right? This is her dorm room now. Her roommate would always pick up. So we finally met. She was basically swerving me at the time. Now, what ended up cracking the Da Vinci Code with her was, and back then I had no idea what a love language was, right? When you're this young, that wasn't in our atmosphere. So her love language is food, right? So 19-year-old undergrad on a meal plan in college meets a guy who's willing to take her anywhere. And at the time it was like Red Lobster, all things like legal seafood. So I was eating, prior to meeting her, and she had an appreciation for food. So I could remember her being sick one day, and she finally did answer. And I was like, let me just bring you some soup. And then I think from there, and she can kind of give you the connection point from that point. But that's when this wild ride started. And granted, guys, I was not even supposed to be in Providence, Rhode Island at the time. If all things were, they all did work out correctly. And we're firm believers, and she only made it there to pick me up, and I only stayed there to make sure we connected. So she was coming off I guess the tail end of the year when we first started dating. She's graduating. I'm still kind of messing around, figuring things out, getting ready to go back to New York. She's going to move to New York to go to FIT to finish up her fashion degree. At the time, this is what she was into. So it worked out perfect because we ended up just moving to the big city together and then, progressing on what the next phase of life would have been. But I can tell you that the minute that I met Mirror and we started to date, we were inseparable from day one. Like I dropped everything at that point. It was only her. I used to go out at night. I remember calling her after the club. Mirror was always up. It's like, hey, you want breakfast? So it was kind of our move. She didn't do the club, so I would pick her up after the club. We would just go to a breakfast spot and just do our thing. So we'd be up all night. But the wild part about staying up with her was that wasn't really in my pedigree or my DNA at the time. I loved to sleep. So I was suffering, just to be up with her. And it was good times. I wasn't like falling asleep on her. But when we got together, she's like, man, this kid's really in bed by 9 and not a 2, 3 in the morning type of guy. So the sacrifices we made, the bait and switch, that's what she calls it. Yeah, so we just did what normal couples would do at 19, 20 years old. And it was all wrapped around food and some sort of entertainment. And it's till this day, 21 and a half years, it's still rooted in food and all things entertainment. So nothing's really changed outside of the 2 little ones we brought along.
So the food, though, is not the love language, but to bring the astrology part into it, I'm a Taurus. And Taurus is all things comfort. We love food, things like that. So, I mean, he inadvertently, without knowing, tapped into, oh, this is what she resonates with. And he didn't know the astrology at that point, but the intuition led him to like, okay, well, I'll feed her. And then, the Taurus in me was like, well, yeah, we could do that. And so, and he's been feeding me ever since, as you guys could see on the Instagram, the fish sandwich earlier today and all of that. he does well with feeding me. So it meshes very well.
So to give you a little backstory on her, so while we're in New York, she graduates from FIT and realizes fashion isn't for her, right? Prior to graduating. So now we're at an impasse. We're living in Brooklyn at the point. I'm starting some new businesses, just hitting the ground and the pavement, just trying to really put things together on our end. She's figuring out what the next play is going to be. And it's law school, right? It comes into conversation now. Mira's always been good with words, always a great writer, an extraordinary thinker. Right. So when the law school things happens, we're sitting in New York at the time, and I'm just getting things established in the city. And I could remember her telling me, getting into law school in New York could be very competitive, right? The universities that offer the program. And, at the time, I'm just like, listen, for you, I don't care where we go, right? Just apply to whatever university or city or state that you feel fit, and I'll figure it out, right? So I didn't want to put any pressure on her. So usually in relationships, this could be one of the catalysts that kind of hold people back. So, me putting down what I had going on to make sure that she was set. We could have went to Zimbabwe for this degree, and I would have figured it out in Zimbabwe. As long as there's air and there's people walking around, I will sell some shit no matter where we went. Luckily for us, she ended up applying to a school in Rhode Island, this is where we originally met. So it felt like it was a right fit for us to go back, or at least be familiar with a city that we were just coming from. So she ends up moving back to Rhode Island full time. We bought a condo. I stayed in New York and was kind of splitting time back and forth because at the time I had a retail store and a few other things going. And so it was a kind of our first time that we were really separated from each other. She's doing a full-time school situation. I'm building the businesses back in New York. And I mean, how much was I traveling back and forth? Was I coming up on the weekends? It was a lot, right?
Yeah. Like every other weekend.
Yeah.
Sometimes every weekend. And then during the week, sometimes when you could.
Yeah. So there was a lot of back and forth, but I can't truly remember it. And then at some point I ended up packing up. Things kind of went left field in New York where locations were closing. And I decided to just move all the operations to Rhode Island, and we were back together full time again when she was maybe your second year.
No, you came around the first year still, the tail end.
So first year, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's what that's how that wild ride started in undergrad that led us to, you know, a few different states. Yeah, so if
I
you
think you're leaving out like the juicy stuff.
what you got?
Oh.
Tell me.
So in undergrad, so like you said, I was 19, he was 23. Initially when he was on the chase, I didn't know what he looked like. I wasn't paying attention. I was just like, I'm not interested. So, you know, he's calling and finally, and I wasn't sick. And I was like, oh, you know, he asked if I wanted to go out to eat. And I'm like, I'm not feeling too well. He said, well, I was gonna go get something to eat. Can I bring you something? I'm like, well, where are you going? He's like, Red Lobster. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can go for a cheddar biscuit, you know? And so, you know, I would say that was our first date. We're out and he's, you know, I'm enjoying, you know, my fried shrimp and everything. And I'm looking at, he was very quiet. I'm like, what's wrong with him? He had this little Motorola two-way pager at the time. And I mean, I didn't even have a cell phone at this time. This was 2001, you know? And I remember just, you know, as I'm like biting into my shrimp, like, who's he talking to? Like, nobody has a two-way pager. Like, who's he talking to? You know? But the food was enough to just kind of like, you know, I'm fine with this, and I'll deal with him being quiet, right? But it was just a little like, he's quiet, or what's I could tell that he's in his thoughts, right? But something in me was like, well, that ain't about me. I'm not gonna take offense. You know what I'm saying? So part of why I share that is that there was something in me just being curious enough, or having taking the moment to be like, what's going on in his mind, as opposed to jumping to, he ain't paying me any attention. He invited me out and he's on this two-way, and you know, all of the things. But you know, my natural inclination is to be interested. Like, what are you doing? You know? So all of this now makes so much sense after we got into, after I got really deep into studying our birth chart. But before getting to that, I'm just saying there's breadcrumbs along the way in a relationship. And if you're together long enough and you stick it out, you can then look back like, oh, that's what that meant. That's why we had this opportunity. And what really sealed the deal for me, because for me, I was, you know, at first I'm into the food. I'm like, you know, he didn't even become cute to me until like the next week. Like, not even like he didn't start off, you know, attractive, but I wasn't looking at him. He's just like, all right, well, you know, we're hanging out. But there came a point where we're starting to share, you know, our backgrounds, and it was revealed, you know, that we both grew up the same way, by single fathers. Our mothers we did not live with, but they were still, you know, they're still alive. They were still in our lives, but we didn't live with them. And growing up in the 80s, like, that was an anomaly. Nobody was just with their father who had a mother who was alive. So when I found, and we happened to be the same exact age when our parents separated. So me meeting him and learning that, I felt seen. Because prior to that, I felt like I was some, I don't know, purple unicorn who just like, I was the only one in life who had that experience. So I thought, you know, in my 18, 19 years. But coming together and sharing that, oh, we have this in common, and it was so distinct, it was so specific. That is what really carried us the most. Because even in times when things were getting rough and the growing pains, of course, there was something of like, but this was not random. This is by design. I've got to stick it out to see what's on the other side of this, because it was so specific. So I say all that to say that coming together in this conversation about love and astrology, there's just so much lying beneath the surface. But you got to be willing to pay attention, and then you have to go seek, like, what's there. And once we found what essentially was the design of it, and you get the confirmation, it's like ball game now. Like now, 21 and a half years later, it's like, whoa, it's like really starting to get super duper fun. And the food is way better, you know? So I add that in there. My recollection of the story of our love story.
That makes sense. Listen, guys, if it's for me, there'd be so many holes in the story with my memory. Because there's been so much, like literally 21 and a half years, and like nothing, no other relationship that we know either, because there is no break in between where she works for 8 hours and then I work and come home. We are literally like attached at the hip, right? We both work from home. We're both super involved in the kids' activities. Like it really is, for those who know us, know the situation. It's not your typical 40 hours out of the house or 50 hours and then you come together on the weekends. Like we date during the day. We're so intentional on just how much good times we spend together, which becomes our default at the end of the day anyway, because all of it's wrapped around food and we love to eat. And then the rest, just kind of falls into play. And with Mira, what I can say is when I first met her, because I was heavy on the dating scene at the time, and I literally cut off everything the minute I met her. She was like no other. So I've never really dated a girl from the South who had, it was just different, put it that way. So when you're used to just dealing with girls from the East Coast that, she knew how to tend a house, she knew how to greet guests, she knew how to, just I didn't have to ask for anything, right? And that's fairly new, especially when you're that age. She just came with so much, there's just so much wisdom built into her. So at the time, I don't know the value of this, right? Because you're figuring things out, right? Super, egos on a million. I'm trying to do all things at this point. So she was a lot more grounded and gave me a lot of, she taught me a lot of patience, right? And I definitely put things into perspective, because if I didn't meet her at that time, I probably wouldn't be on this call right now, right? All things were supposed to lead me. Those who know my background know where I should have ended up, right? Based on statistics. But I can tell you that there were instances where there were things that I wanted to do, but because of her, and not so much that I didn't want to do it, I just wanted to protect her from all things, right? So it basically put me on a straight and narrow, for the life run, at times where I wanted to veer off a little bit. So, with that said, and understanding the astrology. So just to give you a little background on my astrology. So I've always been the kid that picked up the paper since I was younger, and I've always read the astrology section of the newspaper. So I've been doing that since I was a little kid, not realizing, that's just astrology for the day. Doesn't really give you much. So Mira goes on this journey a few years ago of self-awareness, and I'm watching this thing develop right in front of me, right? And then she could just take over from here, but I'm just giving you my perspective on what I've seen, because she was the one that introduced me to a bigger part of the practice than what I was accustomed to, right? Because you kind of know I'm a Capricorn, and all traits of what a Capricorn is, and it's always spot on when you hit the basics. But then when she found some layers to it and started to give us, the family, the birth charts, and seeing how all things connect in not only our household, but just in the universe. That was ball game. That was definitely, I would say, the most pivotal piece of information that she could have delivered to me, which is crazy because to fast forward now with the group, a lot of know that I've introduced this practice, not at a high level. This is why I'm bringing my wife on, but with Champ was one of the first guys in the crypto space that I kind of introduced the astrology to, and there was a few other friends, and then Sincere's on here also. He's a good friend of mine, and we'll get him on for him to give his perspective on it. So astrology, it's always great sharing with people who know nothing. And there's some guys, even with Champ, where he was it wasn't that he didn't know anything, he just wasn't interested in going too deep, right? But definitely was receptive when he started to see, because that's the one good thing about the astrology is you can't fake who you are at the end of the day. You know, when you read the profile and you start to connect, and if you have the time to actually do the work, then it takes you to a whole nother level. But I've met guys who, so you guys knew I took a trip to Puerto Rico for all things crypto, and I had a friend out there, and I could remember running his astrology, and I'll do this to anybody I do business with. And I knew the minute that I started to, I knew the propensities of the energy I felt with him just didn't resonate. But when I read all things about him, I definitely knew that we didn't have a partnership, that it wouldn't have worked based on what I read. We just weren't compatible. So I left that alone. So I utilize the practice for a lot more than just understanding who I am, if that makes sense. So Mayor, if you want to just take them on that self-awareness journey and all things taking you through Texas and my wife,
all that.
Rachel. Well, just the short version.
I'm just kidding. Well, first I'd say that whether you are aware of your astrology and all of the things, you just are anyway. So what's going to be is going to be anyway. So in the essence of just Dot Connect Wednesday, I mean, the biggest Dot Connect, I mean, Champ and I went to high school together, you know? So all of this was at play way before we even knew, you know? So clearly it's no coincidence that Champ and Steve ends up, you know, in this space at this moment in time, because the universe is already conspiring for all of this to happen. So essentially, when you delve into astrology, numerology, all of these really ancient practices of just understanding, it paints a picture. So your birth chart in astrology really is just like a blueprint of all of the energies that were conspiring at the exact moment of your birth. It's what you were instilled with. It's the energy that you were instilled with at time of birth. You know, it's the blueprint, right? So whether or not you are aware of it or not, it is, you know, but knowing it, you can apply and you can understand, and it helps you navigate the world with your relationships with self so much easier. And then there's other parts, you know, there's, you know, your birth chart, then there's numerology, then there's human design. There's so many things. And the journey that I went on started with, I need to know myself. And it came in the form of, well, I don't feel like I really know my parents. So in 2018, there was a picture, and it was random that I came across it, but it was a picture that went viral. And it was an old white guy. This is the time of, what was it, Charlottesville, where, you know, the car ran through the people and all of that. And there was this big, you know, there was racial tension. And there was a picture of an older white guy in an 82nd Airborne hat. And it was just a shot, right? And he's holding up Nazi signs and all the things. And for some reason, like, it struck me, like, I'm like, I know that hat. And then I'm starting to see the comments underneath, and even the Army is like, there's no way that this man is 82nd Airborne, because 82nd Airborne fought the Nazis. So that was the first piece. That was the connection piece of, like, my father's 82nd Airborne, and there's so much rich history here, and I know nothing about it. How is that so? So I connected that with, well, if I don't know him fully, and I definitely don't know my mother fully, because I did not live with her growing up, then how do I really know myself fully to be able to, at the time, the intention was, I want my children to know all of me. And if I don't know all of me, then I definitely can't give it to them. So then I went down the rabbit hole of, like, okay, well, let me explore. So in 2018, I went and I interviewed the oldest of the lineage that I could get to, which was my great-grandmother, my paternal great-grandmother, not grandmother. She was 95 at the time, and I didn't have a close relationship with her. I'm like, well, she's got to have some jewels. So I wanted to know the inception of my father. My maternal grandparents are not living. So that was source for me. That was the furthest back I could go. So I went and I interviewed her. I went to Texas, I interviewed her. That was wild. And then that summer, so that was January. Then that summer, I went back to Texas with my father, interviewed him, learned more about his childhood, and was actually able to see, you know, what is this environment that cultivated my father. And then I went to Korea in November that year with my mother to see what that was all about. And it changed me. It changed me completely. I had a completely different understanding of the makeup of me just on a human level, not even the astrology part, right? So the human level of where did I come from, to the two human beings and what their past lineage was, their family lineage, what was that energy? So once I got that, I'm like, well, there's more, because it was dark. I'm like, well, I can't just stay with that. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? I've opened Pandora's box and it ain't really what I want to see. So then I kept going. And a good friend of mine, she read my birth chart first. And from there, I was like, I need to know all of the things. So I started digging. And then it was one of those things where when all the data is there and it's laid out so like matter of fact, and it is dead on point, you have to believe. And so then I did Steve's chart, I did my kids' chart. And then now this whole picture is starting to materialize in front of me. And then it's, you know, human design and the numerology, and finding that, wow, Steve and I are both life path number niners, you know, we're both manifesting generators. We're two highly compatible earth signs. That's not a coincidence, you know? And so it evolved from there. And now I use it as a tool for understanding humanity, basically. You know, we all have a blueprint and a design and propensities that are just there, you know, but because we're not tapped into it, we don't really know how to use our energy. We're just, you know, we're spewing things out left and right all day and not really understanding, where is this space coming from? What is this energy within my physical shell really trying to establish here? You know, because if you know that we're spirits and we're souls, and it keeps going, the physical is just a small part of this thing. So I really wanted to know full on, like, what is this about? And when I saw the full picture, it was like game time. Like, oh, I get it. Like, Steve gets the most grace now. And I'm like, you know, when he's starting to act a little like, what's going on? Why is he so hyped up right now? I go straight to his chart. And I see what planets are in transit. I see what energies are that he's dueling with, if you will, at the time. It's like, oh, I get it. It's not personal, you know, and it'll be fine. Same thing with my children, you know, being able to understand them on the core level of what they are designed to be outside of just a reflection of Steve and I. You know, it allows you really just to relax in this space. This human experience is a wild ride, and we need all the tools that we can to help us navigate, so that we can operate within it with some dignity, with some kindness, with some grace, with some love. And the more you understand, the easier that becomes. That makes sense? It's weird talking to a screen and not seeing people and just talking and not getting the feedback. So, you know, give feedback when you can.
Yeah, now they're in the chat.
Okay.
To chime in. Yeah, so when she talks about the grace part, guys, this is important, because, you know, the same way she goes to the charts, I go to it. Only she can, clearly we're different, so she can internalize things and process a lot differently than I can. I'm really high sprung. I'm at it, right? Where her pace is more methodical. I'm straight out the door. So in the last couple years, especially during the pandemic, it actually brought us a lot closer together in that time, because, you know, at that point there's like no real responsibility for the first time ever in my being, right? So I've learned so much from her pace of how she goes about things. And in the beginning, it was like it used to drive me crazy, right? But when it starts when it starts to be about you, right? Because no one wakes up in the morning and say, you know what, I want to fuck with her today. You know what I'm saying? Like no one's that wicked with it, right? So when you could understand that things, and it's not personal, right? Because she gives a lot of grace, and without that tool, it's been some shit before that just goes left field. I mean, we're all human at the end of the day, but the way that I've watched her mature over the years since really diving into that practice, and it's not like full all in garb and doing all sorts of wild stuff, because when you think of astrology, it can seem a little offbeat to most, but it's a matter of just the genius part about Mirror is the way that she can process information, and I mean a lot of fucking information, right? And the way that she could make sense of it for you, when you're constantly on the go and you're doing things outside of, and I could attest to it, right? Because everything was, and she knows me, I'm balls to the wall, let's get this money, venture after venture. And now I find myself at this pace that's like, it's
Steady.
calming. It's what still?
It's steady.
It's steady. Yeah, that's a good word. But this woman gives me so much peace. You know what I'm saying? And that's important, because if anybody's an entrepreneur that's on here and you have to work from home day in and day out, I'm talking about all the stressors of work and trying to put things together. We've been through damn near a foreclosure, short sale, lawsuit, negative bank accounts, right? I have screenshots of these things, like to a point where I had to take the finances over from her because she just didn't, like, we just weren't connected in the business sense, where it was just like, we just didn't know what was coming in. I was making it, she was paying it. It became heavy, at one point between us. So now that we're on the other side of it, I can look back at the entirety, but in looking at her chart, and every day is kind of my daily practice. I read my reading and then I'll read her reading, so I kind of see how we're adjusting. And it's crazy because in the morning it'll say something, and if you guys read the situations, you'll see something with, oh, there could be an argument with your spouse today. So me being intentional, when I hear that, I'm just like, that ain't me, not today. So you start to move with a lot more I'm intentional in the way I move because of the information that I have. And Champ will tell you, there's days where it's just like you forget to read it and you go off kill, burn the house down. And then when you go back to it, it's like all things of, I should have stayed on course. So I make that like my daily practice to just make sure I know, how this moon is.
What the energies are transmitting that day.
That's it, right? And we've had intimate talks about this too, where I think it was October when there were so many planets and so many planets in retrograde at that time. And it was just one of those moments where the common message was, listen, just stillness, do not start anything new. And then when we kind of brought it up to the group, we had a couple of people, one girl on here was like, she thought she was pregnant because people were just kind of sleeping. I felt a little lethargic and lazy around that time based on how high energy I am. So now I'm more flowing with, like she says, the energy of what the world's giving me, as opposed to me thinking I can control all things, right? Because that's Steve to his core. Still to this day, delegating, you read my chart, is one of the hardest things for me to do, is to give things to people to do. So again, one, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. Two, the peace, again, as an entrepreneur, to have somebody super supportive, like she would just get started with the day and I'll say, you know what, let's go buy a boat. And she's like, oh God, this guy, fuck it. She doesn't say fuck it, but it's just one of those things. Like, Steve always has a nutty idea, and she has never, ever dimmed my light on anything that I wanted to do. Venture-wise, it's always like, and as much as she thinks too, and I'm pretty sure she has, some insight with certain things, but she always knew when to interject, and then always giving me my space to just be, and this was even before, like I said, she was just so evolved for 19 at the time. I could only base it on what I've been through in the past, and I'm like, I have never met someone like her before, ever. Like, no qualities even close. So I knew from the friend, I tell her all the time, I knew from the first day that I needed to be with her. Like, that was the mission. And I've always been spot on with everything that I've invested my time into. And this by far, guys, and I'm introducing you to like my most prized. And when I say investment, I don't mean in the sense that like I have ownership over her. It's just like, she is the reason behind what's happening now, for sure. And there was, I would say, there was a point that we reached when Mira finishes law school. You know, at the time we're going through, you know, financial situations, and she could easily go out here and command any salary that she wants. But she knew from the time that she went to law school that she wasn't going to be practicing in a traditional sense of law. So from what we know now, and she knew this from before, law school taught her how to think, right? Am I on point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So some people use the law degree to make money, and clearly it's gonna it works, right? It does make us money, but not in the traditional sense. So we end up deciding to have our son right after, I want to say the same day you found out you passed the bar, you were pregnant, right?
The same week I found out I passed the bar, we found out I was pregnant. But just backing up a little bit, that when you were saying what I bring to your life and how you knew right away that you needed it, the same thing, it's happening simultaneously. Like, I didn't look at you like, oh, I need you, but it's the recognition once it comes about, like, let me stay close to here, you know, because this feels right. So when I remember reading the book The Alchemist, and that was the first time where like kind of the I felt the stars aligning, like, I get it, you know. And I remember getting the kind of downloaded message, like, you know, our paces are different, but like Steve is more the activator. I'm more like meticulous and like, let's think this through and let's have a plan. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that my being paired with Steve is going to help me disseminate my gift, my light, my message, my art. That's his role, you know, in this pairing that we've found ourselves into. You know, he helps push when I'm like, you know, I'm Taurus, you know, I'm like, I want all things comfort. My Mars is retrograde, so I'm like, you know, I'm a little slow with it, and he activates me. So in all the praises that he gives me, it's like it is really going. It is very reciprocal. You know, it's going both ways. So my law school and everything, you know, I say that it trained me how to think critically, but I knew that my soul could not survive in the traditional setting of a law practice. It is just, ain't it, you know? So I saw it as kind of a divine intervention 2 times over, because I graduated in 2009. It was at the height of the recession. There were no jobs for attorneys. You know, like, whenever would you imagine as a law student that I'd get out of law school and there would be no job? You know, in the year prior, before I graduated, in November of 2008, they called it Black Thursday or Black Friday or something, where like almost 10,000 attorneys were laid off in one day. Like, it was wild. And I'm not at the top of the class that has a job lined up for when I graduate. So I'm in the field. So I applied to a few things, but like Steve said, you know, the week I found out I passed the bar, I was admitted into New York and New Jersey. So I found out I passed both bars and that I'm pregnant, you know, all in the same week. So it was pretty clear I'm not going to work anytime soon, because I don't have a job lined up. And by the time that like I interview and do all that, I will be showing, and no one's hiring a new attorney who's pregnant. I knew that. So it was very easy. I didn't have to think too much about it, right? It was very easy to just say, okay, well, we're going to have this baby and I'm going to focus on that. So we have our son, everything's great. When he turns about a year, he's like, well, why don't you go and just volunteer a little bit, see, get your feet wet, see what's out there career-wise. So I started volunteering in like a legal aid, like bankruptcy. And when I tell you that, like, it crushed my soul, like, just to be there in that space, beige, just on, just folders, like, stacked high on the desk. Like, it was just like, it was low vibrations, right? So I wasn't there for more than 2 weeks, and boom, I'm pregnant again with our daughter. And then right after that, we moved from Rhode Island to come back to the tri-state area. So I saw it both times over as divine intervention. And it's like, you could see it as coincidence, but when you're really tapped into the present and like trying to figure out when it's that meaningful, of like, why is this happening this way? You will get your answers. And for me, it really was about like, well, I need to just invest everything that I know, all of my knowledge, all of my wisdom, all of my training into my family. I've and it's funny because I never wanted to go into litigation, but the two real legal jobs that I've done have been for Steve, and they've been litigation. So my training and even our real estate brokerage, that's all under, me being a licensed attorney. I didn't have to, we could open shop just on the strength of my law license. So it plays its part, just because you go somewhere to pick up something doesn't mean it has to play out in the traditional realm, how the external world would like to see it. I picked up my knowledge, it goes to my family first. It's not going 80 hours a week outside of my family. My investment is to my family. And that's what really became clear. And then just recently, so our son is 12, but just recently over the summer, I had a Vedic astrology reading and connecting the dots, right? So a member of this group, I think actually spoke about the Indian practice of getting your birth charts when you're born and all of that. And he connected us actually to an organization that does readings from India. So I took one of the readings from India, and it was like confirmation. I asked her specifically, what is my purpose here? Why am I here? And then I asked her about my past life. And this woman, clear as day, like, just, matter of fact, like, yeah, in your past life, you were very much so into your career. You mastered it. Like, you were great at all the things. You did that thing. But your family suffered for it. You didn't spend a lot of time with your family. So you've come back to essentially be a mother. And I'm in tears. I'm like, wow, like, I knew it in my heart. I know it in my intuition. But to hear somebody say it back so matter of fact, like they know that it's not a secret, was a confirmation, because it wasn't easy. The external world, there's a lot of pressure from the external world for you to be all of the things and to fit into a box that it wants to use, right? The narrative is not, yeah, go out, get your education and come back and start a family business. No, they want you out. They want you on the hamster wheel. They don't want you at home with your children downloading their day and being in touch with their emotions. You know what I'm saying? So when I didn't go and practice as an attorney right away, there were so many people like, so yeah, how's the baby? And so when are you gonna start using your degree? Like, being a mother is just never enough. Like, in American culture, motherhood full-time is not like the sexy gig. You're supposed to, like, be a boss, super sexy for your husband, mom, all the things. It's like, well, no, you can't do all of that well. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, there's a lot of people who do all the things. But for me, anyway, I knew I knew it. And the astrology confirmed it. Like, I'm here for this purpose. Specifically, I came back to do it again for this purpose. So all of it just connects, even, like I said, the dot connect, right? Giving me that other piece. This is something that Steve started, right? The activation part of Steve saying, okay, in this time, I'm going to look for my tribe. We're going to do this crypto. I'm going to get it done. We're going to do it by Zoom, however. And then this other piece comes along that was so meaningful to me that I was then able to transpose into even more power and resonance in that the family unit is the most dangerous thing to the machine, because we have our freedom. We have our freedom of time. We have our autonomy. We are not owned to where I was on Instagram earlier, and a friend of mine from school, she reposted something that said, pray for those who have jobs that don't allow them to say 90% of what they think. We are not okay. I'm like, that sucks. Like, you can't speak 90% of what you think in a day. That's not what it's supposed to be. It's crazy. So we have chosen, and by design, like, this is just what it is. Like, we're just going with the motions, but as we grow, and then now we've got tools, it's like, wow, this picture is wild. This picture is really wild. And then you realize the responsibility that you have. Like, we didn't just come here to I don't know, waste away our life, buy cars and things, and to make us feel good. Like, no, we've got an actual mission and a purpose. And if you are lucky enough to find a partner in this life that helps make that mission easier to actualize, that's everything. That's the bag. You know what I'm saying? That's the true bag. And it's sitting right here in this house.
And then, guys, just to think, right? So we probably all grew up in the same era where you even think about family shows, not the bullying comedic shit that goes on now, where everybody's just kind of making fun of each other, like a real family show that shows you mom, dad, professional, or navigating kids through the world. Like, we actually truly live a Cosby Show life, right? Because that's the only comparison I could make with what's out there. So when she goes, this is when I knew it was on. So at the first lawsuit just buried me. At that time, I'm just like, I'm ready to do the most, right? The second one, I was steady and easy. I said, listen, pay an attorney, no problem. Let's go. The first thing she said, she's like, listen, we're not taking that money out of this household. So that's when I was like, oh shit, we got a problem. She wins the case, no problem, but you figure that the money was going to go to someone else's household. At the time, she has the skill set to do this. So she, like she said, she did it twice, in both cases where we had something arise. So being able to step up to the table and because of the time and the flexibility that she had, she was able, not that she really wanted to, she just knew that's what, that I guess at the end of the day, you did want to do it because we did have an option to just pay another attorney. I would say one of the real reasons why things are flowing the way they're flowing between us in 21 and a half years is we've never brought other people, the external, into our relationship. We didn't come from that super tight family where, you're kind of trained by your parents to, take care of them or tell them all things. And so we didn't really buy into our ideology of how we grew up. So I thought of something today and I wrote it down. And what came to me was your traumas can bring you together, right? But the healing is what keeps you together. So this 21 and a half year journey to this healing point where she went on her own journey individually. I did my own healing. We brought the practices together and we supported each other in all of it, right? And it was a nightmare when she went to Korea because this is the first time that my wife just wasn't even around and then just left me with 2 kids. I'm telling you, we were all sick through our stomach. How many days? 10 days?
Yeah.
It was like an eternity, so I couldn't even imagine not that I can't take care of the kids. There's no problem with getting them where they need to go, but it was just, you don't realize how much someone is needed until they leave for that long. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, my son couldn't sleep. His stomach was in knots. When she comes back to school, the teachers are telling her stuff about my daughter that I didn't even know was happening because she masked it well. So we were all a hot mess without her being here. So going back to I would still say the family is an institution, right? Because when you look at some of the most elite families in the world, what do? You know what I'm saying? They control all things, right? They don't own much, but they control all things and they make it family business at the end of the day. So it's like, and I remember 19 Keys saying this in one of his talks where he was just like, we have a culture where it's like you want to push your kids out the door at 17, 18 years old, knowing that they're not prepared for this world. You know what I'm saying? And think about it, where are you sending them? To college, right? So there was always the messaging that was out there. And I watched my wife even struggle with, our peer and friends who were just like, man, your wife is a lawyer. And sometimes it even got to me where it's like, yeah, how the fuck is she not making no money? Especially when we needed it, not realizing there was a pivotal point where when we lived in Jersey and in our complex, there was a like a daycare situation.
Yeah, there was a daycare on site.
It was right on site.
And yeah, we lived in a community, an affluent community where like the ferry to Wall Street was right there. So there were a lot of people like working, major jobs, and like it was very corporate over there. So it was convenient to have a daycare right there on site. They drop their kids off, they get right onto the ferry, and they're off to work. So the daycare, it ends up coming out that there was some abuse to the children in the daycare, like horrible things. And I remember like being at the playground and talking to some of these mothers, and I remember one mother saying like, it's killing me because my child is not of age to speak. So whatever happens to my kid, he can't tell me, and that's when Steve was just like, thank God you're home. Like thank God for you being home, and to just not even, I don't call it a sacrifice, but it was a choice. It was a conscious decision. Like this was not a default, like I have nothing else to do, let me just stay home and like, play home. Like, no, this is like a lot of work, and it was a conscious decision. And that's when Steve really saw it for the first time. Like, wow, that could have been our kid, So just to give a perspective, it's like, yeah, I could be making a whole lot of money, but like at what cost? I still think about that woman, like at what cost? Are you going to let your children bear the burden of you needing to go like get this proverbial bag, and like for what? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I know that like not everybody, that this is a privilege. I have a husband who like makes for sure that we have what we need. And, I understand that some women, that's just not their reality. So, I mean, it's not a judgment, but for bringing it back to like what the topic is here of astrology and all that, it's like, you've got to listen to your intuition. My intuition said, stay home with your kids. And a lot of that was by design of just, I didn't grow up with my mom. So it gave me that fuel of like, no, I've got to do it differently. There's some dysfunctional patterns that I've ingested that I now need to purge. And I can't do that if I'm spending 80 hours a week outside of my home. So in the beginning, like, yeah, you don't really know because you're not getting that positive feedback. And in the beginning, it is very much so like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot, and I'm not getting paid for it. Like there's a lot of just silent work and just managing a home and raising thoughtful, intelligent, thinking children. It's a lot. And I knew that I didn't have the capacity to do both at that time when they were young. I knew that my time would come, but where I needed to be was home at the time. And the astrology was a gift in that it confirmed it when I got to it later on. And really, I started to go down that rabbit hole when we were having our son, because I knew that he was going to be born under the sign of Cancer. So I'm like, okay, you know, like, what am I going to do with this? All of this emotional energy. I'm an earth sign. I am logic. I am practical. You know what I'm saying? So I already knew from its inception, it's just like, okay, I'm going to have to do my homework. And I was prepared, having gone through law school, right? So it's like, I know how to research. I know how to find the information. It's just a matter of like being intuitive enough to say, okay, I need to find this in order to get that. So my motivation was, I need to be able to help my child be emotionally intelligent, because that's what's going to serve him. That's how he's going to survive in this world. So I did start going to the astrology. I tracked the moon, because he's a Cancer and he's ruled by the moon. Even in his human design is ruled by the moon. So I track all of that. And it is very helpful, you know, because sometimes he's just like, you know, off the rails, and I'm looking at outside like, yeah, it's a full moon. Go to bed. You know, like, it'll be all right. Go breathe, and like, I'll see you in the morning. So it's very helpful. Whereas otherwise, I feel like if I didn't have that tool, we would probably be grinding our gears a whole lot more. You know.
And that's pivotal. So when she talks about not having her mom around, and this is part of what she came back to complete this mission. Same for me with growing up in a Haitian household and being, you know, first generation Haitian American. And for those of you on here who know, there's a stark difference in how we see eye to eye, right, within those households, right? We're Americanized, we're in the streets, we're going to school, all things. You have people coming from a third world country, right? That's that different ideology and all things, religion, and you name it. So with that said, my dad, as much as he was a provider, he was never present, right? So I always said, when I had my kid, I definitely want to be present. So part of the entrepreneurship and why I chose this route was the freedom and the flexibility to be able to like say, fuck it, I helping develop my son, coaching the school, all things. I'm just available for the smoke, even on the way that we run down on the school. Like when something happens to one of these kids, you know, my son was having a little something, it was going a little too far. And then, you know, we were able to just get up in the morning and just go. And then we're just on blitz mode now. She's headed to the head of school. I'm headed to, you know, to see, you know, to supervise whoever. And then we're just meeting up in the middle. So you figure, and then this is a good private school that doesn't really need, in essence, when you look at it, you think you send your kid to private school and there's no support needed, but it's like we pulled them out of public school because we knew that wasn't the move. And even when you get into these private institutions, there's still, you know, there's still the, you know, my wife says this too, there's almost like an attack on parents, almost keeping us out of the schools, right?
Well, that's from the pandemic.
From the pandemic, but it was probably brewing from even before, right? You don't get too many involved parents. Like once you're dropped off, that's it. You know what I'm saying? They're going to catch you at the end of the day. So there's definitely a great appreciation for, you know, watching how she handles the car rides, the way that my kids are safe, and being able to download situations in real time. Like they go to her for all things. Like these guys are like, you know, 1-800-snitch on everybody type of situation. And it's just great to see because, you know, as a child, especially when I grew up, we had to hold all this stuff in. We could not allow none of this stuff to get out, you know, and just to talk about our feelings alone is like, forget it. So that's where the emotional part of my son being a Cancer and understanding cancers, right? I work with Champ all day. You know, just seeing the difference. I can remember, you know, 50 Cent, Jim Jones, Irv Gotti, just some of the most aggressive guys, but super emotional, right? So they'll cry and knock you out. Like, right. So to know that there's someone in the corner that can give him that support, you know, that he needs. And then, you know, when I kind of look at those things and I kind of throw it out there, she's like, well, you got to kind of look at to see how these guys' moms were they even involved at the end of the day? Because when mom is in survival mode, how much can you really pour into your child? You know, come 3, 4, 5 o'clock when you're just getting off of work and you have to prepare dinner and then get them ready for the next day. And then now we live in a, you know, it's all private activity situation. So it's like from one thing to the next and back and forth. So the outside noise at one time early on in our relationship did get to me with people questioning, why isn't your wife working? And you kind of look at it, and now that we see how things are, like honestly, if we would have had those astrology readings from, and everything happens for a reason, But I'm just saying that the more information you have, the more tools that you have at your disposal, even with our children, she says that there's a few things that we're going to ask, right? Or we're giving them those tools so they know when they start to date, here's the playbook to self-awareness. One, once you get to know yourself, you can easily flow and feel the energy of other people. You know, most times early on in a relationship, you're going to say one thing and it'll rear its ugly head later, and you realize that that early feeling may not sustain like that. Okay, so who are you at the end of the day? And we're just all battling with these old family traumas that we could either create a 2.0 version of them if we don't fix it, and that is what tends to happen. I tell my wife all the time, I'm always, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Once that tree is rooted, that's where you're from. So we just happen to be the outcasts and the black sheep within our family. So my wife has so much light that she triggers a lot of people with her light, and not purposely. It's just one of those, like, even with me at times, I'm like, fuck, this girl's fucking perfect. Like, what the fuck? Like, what doesn't she know? You know what I'm saying? She's always giving a directive, and it's not, like in a bad way. It's just, this is just how her mind works. And now I have a greater appreciation for it. Whereas when you're going through something, you're like, man, this is the last person I want to hear some shit from right now.
And that goes back to the astrology, where I'm a Taurus. So my sign is ruled, by Venus. And then, being born in May, number 5, the numerology, right, is all communication. If I had to name a superpower, it would be that I am able to communicate, or I'm able to translate my intuition into language. Whereas for a lot of people, you just feel your intuition. You can't really purge it out and display it and make it beautiful and have people understand. And when you think about it, your intuition is, the closest thing you have to source, to God. You know what I'm saying? So to be able to like bring that out and here you go is kind of a gift. So like I can see how it could be a little intimidating, and even me, like before I knew fully what it was, I would dim my own light, like, oh, I'm making people uncomfortable, namely my family, right? So my family, like, oh, they're uncomfortable. Let me just, quiet down. Let me not say too much. But everything is, lying underneath the surface. So bringing it back to astrology again, the more you dig in to the self part, right? Just starting with yourself. Forget, the partner and the kids and all that at this point, but just the curiosity to understand who you are. You've got to start there. Anything else you do in life, it's like, what are you doing it for? Like, why? That was my major thing. It was like, well, why? Why are all of these things happening? How is everything connected? That's just how my brain is wired to think. Like, what are the connection points here? And what is the core issue? That's where the legal part comes in, right? Like, what's the issue? Let's get down to the core. And then like expound. And then the natural curiosity is just like, well, why? And I found that it really doesn't take much. This outside noise really is a lot. It does not take that much. Our children, everybody's children, I mean, just children in general, they are the closest, the least far removed from source, God, universe. They remember, and then they come here and then we put all the stuff on them. And then, you got to find yourself, 30 on someone's couch trying to, unpack your traumas and all that stuff. Like, it's really unnecessary. If you have the intention, or even just the information, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I could tell anybody, what I will tell our children when they start out, like, no, who's that person? Let me read their chart. Let's see if these energies are even compatible before you even go into something, right? Because the initial attraction is there for a reason, but it's like, well, what more? What mission are you on? Numerology will tell you that. Like, Steve and I are both life path number 9. It's the last number, which is the most seasoned soul, if you will. Like, we've probably done this several times over. And like this round is like, all right, this is the finale. Like, we are going to shine light and save the world this time around, you know, like, but when you know that and you see that in your partner, it gives a whole lot more motivation and incentive to try to understand your partner, because why else are we together? We come together with all of our stuff, but really to pour it into one bag to be able to make something more or bigger than what we could individually. And I think a lot of times people lose that, or they miss that, because TV and media and the external that's trying to keep you asleep, they're selling you this whole concept of, you know, the fantasy, the Prince Charming, the white picket fence, all of the things that really have nothing to do with what your souls came here to do together. And having the tools to navigate and to see, like, oh, we are connected in so many ways. No wonder, you know, our stories are what they are. Our parents had to be who they were to cultivate an environment that would then lead us to want to, for me, to be home with my kids and invest full time in motherhood right now, for Steve to get out and do what he's doing. All of that was, you know, our petri dish, you know, and all of it wasn't great, but it's like at the end of the day, it was all for us and in our favor, so that there would be meaning to what we offer here, you know, on earth. When I look at Steve's chart, I mean, so much of what you guys get, it's written, you know, it's what he's doing. Like, his moon is in I think the 12th house. Yeah, his moon is in the 12th house. And I know we haven't gotten into like the breakdown of all the things, but his moon is in the 12th house, and your moon sign really displays how you nurture, how you love, how you feel, how you receive, all of the above, you know. And the 12th house is about like the unseen realm, what lies beneath the surface, the intuition, possibly like psychic abilities. So all of this stuff that where Steve was like, I told y'all this was gonna happen, didn't I tell you? You know, and the passion that he brings to it, it's like, okay, well, he sees something that seemingly other people do not, or have a hard time seeing. So his passion is rooted in that place of this moon of like, this is how I'm going to show love to my people. I am going to provide what I know. I see something, I'm going to share it with my people. It's for love. It's not for money. Like, yeah, it's great, you know, to get money from it, but really this space is so much rooted into how he loves his people. And I think it's important for you guys to know that, like, he's not here just, you know, for show. He cares a lot. This passion, and it's so far beyond crypto. I think you all know at this point, crypto is just a vehicle for it. But there's an urgency. There is a pureness in what he's trying to offer that I guess could be a little esoteric or hard to understand if I didn't know him fully. And I mean, just like in all, just you know, all of the study of him outside of what I can just see. It's way more impactful, and it makes me respect him so much more, and, you know, make me so proud that he's my partner, right? So it's like, all right, so it's like iron sharpens iron. It's like, all right, well, you know, how can I contribute more? Or how can I, you know, support this mission more? Once you realize that a marriage, a partnership, whatever the case may be, is not so much founded on your love for each other as it is what you are building together, whether that be a family, a business, saving the world, whatever it is, you got to tap into that, because that is what's going to sustain you. The love part is just part of it. You know, that's just to kind of get it together. But the rest of it is like, you've got to find purpose. And you first have to find the purpose within yourself. And then you both bring that to the table. And then now you've got a mission, you know.
Yeah, guys. So so she offers three chart readings, right? Your birth, your moon phase, and then numerology, and puts it together. But where I would, and then there's times where she's like, I'm not like, and I think her gift is she's not classically trained in these particular areas, but the way that she can do a deep dive, and I feel when you're classically trained in something and you get that certificate, you have to stay on par with the ideology of whoever set that forth. But I tell my wife, and I'm holding this dear, and it's on Zoom. She is going to invent a language, right? And I told her she might as well just write the new Bible, right? Because I think we're due for an update. But she is going to write a new language. She is going to teach people how to think, right? Like the project she has is far greater than anything I can do, right? And I'm capable of doing a lot, but it's almost like she says, it's almost like I'm in training to support what the real project is, and it's all the things that are in her mind. And when she starts to get that stuff out in an artistic form, that's going to be fun to watch. And the great part about it is, because I know who I am and what my role is, I wouldn't allow ego to get in the way at that point. So if I'm holding a purse or a bag and you see me in the background, just know I've earned my stripes. I'm not a guy who's just along for the ride. So the reports are, I'm telling you guys, it is a must. So when you think about Praveer, who introduced us to that reading that we had, and I'll drop that link to you guys. That's more fortune telling than anything, right? But you should be prepped prior to going into that, because you would definitely want to know how deep you want to go with because if you don't have much self-awareness and you get those things, you may not ask the right questions, right? This is where my wife can prep a lot of people. The way that she can formulate thought and not make you feel less than is amazing, right? So, and I'll just point this out there in my reading, and this came after the fact, and she actually bought it to me because I didn't really pay it any mind. But there's a particular planet in, I believe it's Scorpio, where it's all about like sex, for me, and not just like it'll stay taboo and a desire for a sense of euphoria. So I can go deep with it. And when she analyzed and dissected it, it was one of those, because in relationships, you can get shamed for even trying to have a thought that's outside of what a social norm would be. You know what I'm saying? So it even digs into the nuances of like what makes us tick as people. You know what I'm saying? So her interest may not align with what I'm interested in per se, but if once you get the understanding of what it is, right, and why we tick like that, because prior to her reading that, it's like, not shaming in a bad way, but it's like, you're like a creeper, like it'll be that sort of, not that she says that, but I'm just saying, no, but for other people, you figure if it's a new relationship and, how could you really be you at the end of the day? Because it will hold you back, because there's a lot of aspects to the charts that I look at, and it really gives me an understanding of why I feel the way I feel in certain situations, to where it's that self-proclaimed situation, like she says, it was written. You know what I'm saying? So having these tools at your disposal, and the earlier that you have them, right? So even in understanding the purveyor from India, he would tell us they would get it right at birth, and then they would have it at different milestones in life, right? So imagine meeting a partner and you both having to do this reading, and it telling you that you're not compatible. Like, these people literally don't marry each other. You know what I'm saying? So in understanding of because my wife giving grace, and it wasn't like being stepped on, that sort of grace, but just understanding what's happening in the world, right, and how it's affecting the mood in the house, is really a lifeline, guys. I'm telling you. because shit can go down, and you guys know it can really go down quick, and for no apparent reason either. You're just like, what the fuck just happened? You know what I'm saying? And then the ego, and I can speak from a male perspective, is just like, I'm not apologizing. And she's one of those where it's like, listen, nobody's talking to each other at this point. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna play the whole game. That doesn't work for the family unit. You know what I'm saying? So it's a matter of just really, you know, like she said, step one is really the self-awareness. And then once you can start to tap into your own, you know, understanding your, you know, what makes you tick, then you work into, you know, your partner's situation, and you start to realize, like, this is a fit. Or you might get to a point where you read it and just be like, this isn't this is not a fit, right? Because we've all been through relationships before. And we're not married to the first love of our life. You know, and my wife is crazy to think about, right? Yeah, so that's kind of rare. And like I said, she's an old soul. She knew what the mission was when she came here, and she did not play around. Like, she was not at all interested in hot girl summers and, you know, going out, and didn't really have much female friends when I met her. You know, all my good friends are her friends growing up right now, back in Fayetteville. So it was a bunch of guys that just always protected her, you know, and she's still being protected, you know, even if by me now, where, you know, I just have to make sure at all costs, you know, because what she has to offer the world has to come with a ton of protection, because it's really going to throw everything off its axis at this point now. People just don't know how to you know, think for themselves. You know, information is freely out there, and we all think we know, but it's not thoughts that we formulate on our own, which is why, if you guys know the Dot Connect and how Champ and I approach the university, is all things of analyzing all sides of this, right? And then everybody throwing out their opinion, and then just making sense of it all. But we just tend to pick these sides, and we don't know why we're picking these sides, right? It's like this, it's not so cut and dry, especially when it's somebody else's ideology. So I've been hell bent on, and power has been my thing now, and not power to control people, just power to assist people and believing in themselves. That's always been my move. I mean, we've had businesses where we were on a shoestring, and I made sure I paid the employees, and my wife and I were struggling. She was like, Steve, this ain't it. You know, we got to figure something out, right? I've always put people before myself. And I always used to tell, I was like, listen, in my head, I don't know why this is happening like this, but I do know that these people need it more than I need it, because I could always get back to it. And she's seen me high, she's seen me low. I'm like the comeback kid, you know, when it comes to this entrepreneur space. So to really adopt a lot that she's been saying our entire relationship, to see how I'm just grazing through, you know, Taurus, like, you know, there's just that bull, you know, I've gained a lot of that, slow down and chill, you know, and it's the most clarity I've ever had. It's, and I still don't know how I'm doing it with this, considering how much I push, right? Because I'm always moved and generated by the amount of output that I put out, but like, just something about just watching how she, because listen, guys, to run around with 2 kids and all things, right? I'm talking about super involved, is beyond a full-time job. You know what I'm saying? But where I call bullshit is when you watch, because now this is the dynamic that we're watching amongst our peers. So the pandemic really helped us gain a lot of clarity, where we, you know, everything was for a season. People that were in our lives for decades are no longer in our lives, like, for whatever reason. We're just not on speaking terms, but it made room for some new relationships. And it's crazy because my wife doesn't play social media like the way I do. And to see how she can interact with people in real life. So a lot of what we call them X-Men families that we've met have all been relationships through, you know, my wife and the private activities with the kids, and then meeting other, you know, women in that process. And then we've met some just amazing people in a short period of time. You know, as you start to evolve through life, you start to realize, like, some of your peers who were here prior may not serve, you know, where you're going. And it's not personal or anything, and no one better than the other, but I'm really loving this phase. So it's like, when the pandemic happened, it was a blessing, because this is like a home game for us, especially for my wife. And it was like, you know, you watched on social media a lot of women that we knew that worked, you know, and they're sitting here in the first week, everything was gravy, right? Everybody was like, oh, making lunch for the kids. And, you know, and then after a month or two, that shit just wore out. Where it was like, you know, you get to this point where you're starting to look around, you're like, wow, women aren't even comfortable really being like full-time moms at this point now. You know, you're just relying on a system to grow your children, and that creates a lot of fucking problems in the future, guys. I was a product of public school education with parents not involved in understanding who I am and letting me, you know, assisting me in evolving you know, the way I watch her, just, you know, my son is in drum lessons, you know, and it's helping him find his rhythm, and everything she does is so well thought out and methodical, you know, and I'm just like, every kid should have this situation. Every household, this should just be the minimum. But when you're out here and you're given all this opportunity to, and I'm just going to speak for African American women in the corporate world right now, because we're realizing, you know, they're moving them up the ladder. Women don't have time to do much. You know, you're limiting dating pool when you start to, you know, make that sort of income. And you just, you know, there's a sense of, you know, you just lose yourself. And this is from me speaking to people within the group who have full-time jobs, who come to me with a lot of these things in the background, and I'm hearing it. And that stat that she showed, you know, that, you know, can you imagine like 90% of your day, you can't fucking say what you want to say, and you just have to deal with this. You know, what happens when you put 10,000 hours into that? Are you really who you are at the end of the day? So, you know, the pandemic really, not only did it bring us together a lot closer, but it was eye-opening to see like who was really around us, and how decisions were being made. So to go back to the episode in where we lived in Jersey, there were a lot of parents who were sending their kids to the school that were still like wanting to send the kid to the school only because they had to get across that water to go to Wall Street. They didn't give a fuck about what just happened. You know what I mean? For me, it would have been like a double murder charge at that point. Like I'm not understanding how these people are in the uproar. But when you inconvenience people and they can't get to work, I'm like, wow. You know, and I've watched my wife practically get shamed for being a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, yo, at what point in society is it like, did this, you know, this shift happen? You know, and I don't feel it makes sense for it to I mean, we can't keep this going. So I work my ass off to make sure that she gets what she needs, and it's really the time to be able to grow into whatever she's going to grow into. And we should all have that privilege, you know, like she says, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to clarify that, you know, there's no judgment. Everybody has predicaments and a set of circumstances that lead into why they do what they do. You know, this isn't like a judgment on, you know, women who choose to work or, you know, anything like that. But it's just a different perspective of being intentional about what you're doing by design. You know, like if you are supposed to be, you know, in a profession and doing what you're doing and all that, and you've got the village to help you with your children and all that, you know, that's cool. Like nobody saying there's one way to do anything. I want to like really clarify that it's not about judgment. It really is just about when you know your truth. And for me personally, my truth was that it didn't feel right to be working and not invest in my family. And I know it to be true just based on what I'm here to do. You know, everybody's chart, everybody's path isn't going to look the same. So yes, you know, it may look different for different people. We're not saying that it has to be one way, but I think it's important to just highlight that, you know, your way doesn't really have to be what the masses see as success. You know, that it's okay to just follow your intuition and say, well, I'm going to do this because it feels right. And luckily for us, we were able to get confirmation on the other side of it of like, yeah, that was the right move. You know, so it feels good when you get the confirmation and you know that you're walking in your purpose and that things are playing out exactly as, you know, they are designed to be. And everybody's design is going to be different. But that's why, you know, I start there. I stress, you know, it's just like, well, know who you are, right? Because if you know who you are, and you find yourself in a job, a situation, a relationship that is not bringing out that within you that you've come to explore as a human being, then what are you doing? You know, for me, the path was this for right now, and it's going to transition. You know what I'm saying? We're just being transparent in the transitions. But you know, yes, my life, you know, my children are going to grow up, and I'm not going to be focused and dedicated solely to them forever. But you know, this chapter, this is what it is, and to have the wherewithal to say I'm okay with that, regardless of what my other options are. I'm cool with this because this is where my heart says this is appropriate. So every woman, every person's going to have their own journey. But I think it's important to realize, well, just to acknowledge, for one, that at least in American culture, the system that's out there is not working in your favor. You know, you're being farmed through a system to go work and to spend most of your hours away from your family, because I think they know, you know, there's there's a small amount of elite families for a reason, and they know the wealth, the true power is in growing your family, understanding each other, and using your superpowers together to then do something impactful for the world. But if they keep most of us too busy to grow a strong marriage, to grow well-established, mindful, thoughtful children who are tapped into nature, if they can keep us from doing that, and they, you know, the system, but I mean, if they can keep us from busy so that we don't have time to do that, then it works for them. You've got a nonstop chain of just people who are here to serve and produce for the machine in this country. Forget what your heart actually desires. Forget what your soul's mission is. Forget what makes you happy. You know, they've trained people to really just like be a slave to the paycheck. And that, oh, there's only one way to do it. I've got to go out, you know, and work. You know, before the pandemic, nobody would have thought that they can work from home. But sure enough, you can work from home and be just as productive and be able to invest in your family. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, there's no judgment on what anybody chooses to do, but I think it's just important to at least be in alignment. Like, why am I doing this? What purpose is this serving me first? You know?
Yeah, and that's, you know, this is where we differ, and I like this part of it because I'm a little more radical with it, where she's gonna, you know, she's gonna iron that shit out. I'm gonna give it to you, wrinkle. Listen, at the end of the day, guys, we're putting 2 whole kids out here, and we talk about arranged marriages now, and it's like, that's not far-fetched at the end of the day, because and I'm just speaking that, I'm generalizing it, not any one particular person on this call right now, but you know, we're really parenting full-time, guys, and it's a lot of work to pour into these kids. So when we put them out as whole humans, what sort of dating pool are they going to have out there when you're not investing that much time in your kids at the end of the day? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, our kids aren't going to go around and just be picking up trauma and healing a whole bunch of people. I guess that's not going to be their calling, but this is what tends to happen, right? You put these young kids out here, and you know, all things are getting wild and crazy, and they just don't know how to really assimilate. So from what I'm seeing from my vantage point here, knowing the job that she's doing, and knowing how our peers are just, you know, chasing, you know, this full-time situation, there's just not enough time to pour into these kids at the end of the day. So now we're looking at a bunch of like, this is the future, right? So if we continue on this path, then you figure that the true reason for even, you know, that women's movement, when you look at the whole makeup of it, to just make, you know, add women to the tax roll, really at the end of the day, like, listen, this is a way that we can just control the kids a majority of the day, and have the women out the house. And once you have, and this is just from my perspective, once the woman is out of the house for that many hours, you know, bringing in whatever she's bringing in, and there's children in that household, I'm going to tell you that there's going to be an imbalance. There's going to be an imbalance with those kids. You know what I'm saying?
Unless there's a village to help sustain
Unless there's
the mother's absence.
But even the village situation, guys, let's think about it. We get out here, we come to these affluent areas. Our neighbors are not our village at the end of the day, right? We're just in areas where we're just here, right? Because of safety, schools, for whatever reason, the jobs and X, Y, Z. So that whole village approach to it, us even finding our own village as adults, having to clear out during the pandemic, old friends of, decades, 2 decades, to creating, this new village that we found. And what I'm noticing about the village we have now is everyone's fully invested in their relationship with their spouse and also fully invested in their relationship with their kids. Every single one of the families that we have around us has that same makeup, that same moral compass, that same code, no matter what state we live in, no matter what city, the ideology is the same. And that's missing because it's rare. And then just to give a last story, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So for anybody that's been to our house, it's, from what we hear, it's a vibe, right? We base all things around food and just the energy that we put. So I can remember Champ coming here for the first time, and he's like, Steve, this, he's a guy that loves his comfort and everything. But he said, Steve, it was so comfortable being at your house. You know what I'm saying? And that means a lot because I know how comfortable Champ is at his home. So for somebody to come to your home, and that's the consensus for everyone that stays here, it's comfortable, but there's a flip side to the comfortability, right? So Sincere is a good friend of mine. And again, this is not a chance situation. This was a relationship in passing where, a guy who was my barber, it turned out to be my brother. And we did some work with him last month when he came to visit us, right? And he knows, because I can feel a lot that he feels, even though we're separated. So Sincere is a groomer to the stars, and he's all things on sets with different talent, shooting movies and things like that. So he's been on the go for a while, right? And just to give you a perspective, we were living in Pennsylvania when my son first haircut, or every haircut, we would drive from PA to Brooklyn, 2 hours and 45 minutes for haircuts. Like, how many barbers were passing from Pennsylvania to Brooklyn? So I trusted nobody with our situation. So when he finally, always checking on him, he's like, Steve, I'm on set, I'll call you back. So he's been ripping and running. And then finally, when he was presented the time, because he didn't have the time during the pandemic, it was like all things still go. Whereas most of us had a little bit of time to be able to just kind of, reconfigure some things and analyze some stuff. He didn't. So he ended up coming to spend a few days with us. My wife did his reading. And then, we did all things of just unraveling what's happening. So Sid, if you wanted to, and then first, if anybody the first person to write the city that I met my wife will get a free single reading from her. So if you can remember the city that we met in, and the first person.
I think you gave the city. You just gave the state, I think. Oh, okay.
Give me the city or the state. First person.
How you gonna offer something for me for free?
I'll pay you. All right. So Sonny got it. Sonny, drop your email in here. You could drop it in a private chat to me. Sin, were you a big astrology guy were you into astrology prior to the reading?
Kind of like you were, when, like back in the days, you'd look up the paper and see astrology in the newspaper or something. And this is just what I would look at, just to kind of get a more understanding of, like, because I'm a Virgo, I was born in August. So just to get an understanding of what the Virgo characteristic is, and the fact that we're perfectionists, and the fact that we're very logical and things of that nature. These are the things that I read up on in astrology when they were giving you like the day-to-day. Today, your forecast is X, Y, and Z, and I would just read that. But I never, after a while, I just stopped keeping up with it and just went along with my day. So that was as much info on astrology that I had. I was still curious about it, but never pursued it. And so when you presented me with the option to come to the house and mirror, give me the reading, not that I was skeptical or anything like that, but I was very, very interested in trying to figure out, like, is there more to what it is that I've read in astrology as far as being a Virgo? Like, is there more to my characteristics? Because I realized that even though you're a Virgo, or even though you're a Cancer, or any zodiac sign, like, technically you're in like 2 months, right? You start off on 1 month and you end in the middle of another month, so to speak. So if I'm an August Virgo, how different am I from being an August Virgo to a September Virgo, which my sister is? You know what I mean? So it was just those things that were like, I was curious about to see, because there's two different types of Virgos, or two separate signs in the sense of zodiac, like two personalities, so to speak. Going to the house and doing the reading, and mirror breaking down to me what it was. And I kid you not, it was like you see in them commercials or in them cartoons where your head blows up and you see a bunch of smoke. Like, that's basically like how it felt when she basically broke it down to me. And it's true that when they say certain things, or when Mira was saying certain things to me, these are things that you may have gone through in your life, that you may have witnessed or caught on to, but it's like a passerby type of situation where you see something and you like, oh, okay, cool. Whether you get back to it or not, you notice it, but you don't really pay attention to it. But when she said things, it brought me back to those moments in my life where it was just like, whoa, like, that is me. Whoa, you know what? That is me. I didn't know that those two go hand in hand. So it was definitely an aha moment. And it definitely took me to a place where, like Steve said, I was always ripping and running. I was moving from set to set, going from state to state, going out of the country into the country for whatever movie or film project that I was working on. And I was presented with an opportunity where it was just like, you get to just chill. But I was a little uneasy, and it was around the time of retrograde. So everything was going crazy and going bananas. And so, to be honest with you, like Steve said, like, he had that feeling, but I had the feeling of, like, anytime something goes wrong, or anytime something is affecting me in a certain type of way, I always reach out to Steve and be like, yo, bro, this is what's going on. This is how I'm feeling. Because it's an energy where I feel like, yo, I need my brother. I need to talk to my brother about some things and break it down. And so going through that moment, and then going to their house and going through that reading and so forth, just really, really brought a lot of things into perspective. And currently I just been home, digging into myself, doing more readings, and just trying to figure out the next step in my path, which she let me know what that was. So it's basically going in that direction and trying very hard not to steer away from it. Because when you steer away from it, like they said, if you don't follow through with what your purpose is or what you are here for, and you don't know who you are, you can get into a situation that is not right for you and just be led astray for a whole bunch of years, or however long you allow that to happen. But if you know who you are, a certain situation or circumstance comes your way, and you know that it doesn't fit, you can walk away from that intentionally and proud and confident to be like, you know what, yeah, that's not for me. And whatever happens with that situation, I could care less about, because I'm on the path that I need to be on.
And what you were saying about energy, it made me think of, we're all just energetic beings. It's all energy. We're energy that came together as matter, and you have the physical being. So the energies, understanding the energies of the planets, the sun, the moon, at your time of birth, is important, because it's like not knowing, say you were a 1200 watt, whatever, all this energy, if you don't know what to do with it, you can hurt yourself, and you're definitely going to hurt others. You know what I'm saying? So being mindful that we are energy and that it is our duty and responsibility to understand what we possess so that we can channel it in to use in the force of good is important. It's imperative. I think that's part of what we have to remember as human beings, you know, that we really are just energy, and there's so much energy around us. We have to know how to channel it, how to use it, so that we're not burning people out here. And unfortunately, a lot of people are just burning people out here. They don't know, you know, you're just shooting off. You don't know what to do with this. And, you know, it's our responsibility as parents, you know, to teach our children, you know, until they're of the mental fortitude to be able to do it on their own, to say, hey, you know, like, you've got to channel this way. This is healthy. This is not, you know. So it's good that you're mindful of the energy. You're in tune with the energy. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, you after you get to a certain age, you kind of want your energy to be protected, and you want to be around those people that will protect your energy, but also there's like a connection there as far as kinetic energy that's, you know, intertwined.
Feel it.
You know what I mean? Everything is fluid. And so I'm at a place now where, like, you know, when they say like my circle is so small, squares can't fit in it, that's exactly what it is right now. You know what I mean? So, but the energy was like, Steve has always said to me, like, yo, I always felt whenever something was going on with you, which is why I always hit you. And ironically enough, when he does hit me, there's things that are going on with me, but I'm at work and trying to really, really like push that part of whatever's going on with me to the side to deal with the matters at hand, to make sure that I'm attentive to the work that I'm doing and not making any mistake on the craft that you know, the projects that I'm working on. And I'll tell him, like, yo, I gotta hit you back because I'm here right now. And then when I do get that moment, whatever I may have been thinking about or dealing with is so pushed so far to the side that me and him just start talking about other things and just connecting just how we normally connect. But it's just this one particular moment where it just like, it happened twice, where I reached out to him and he kind of felt it. And then even now, just me being home and just being with my wife and being with my son and just dealing with things or whatever, we won't speak for like 4 days or whatever. And there's no love lost. This is my brother. So we could not talk for a week and I'm okay. Or we could talk every day and I'm okay. But he'll hit me at random moments and be like, yo, son, what's good? You good? And my mind will be in a place and I'm like, how'd you know? Like, I'll just hit him back like, yo, how did you know? And we'll get on a call and just start talking. So that's very, very, I'm very fortunate and blessed to have that and to feel that and to have that awareness. And I definitely say that not only should somebody get their reading, but everyone should just get a point in their life where you just sit still for a moment and just sit still and just allow everything to just happen. The pandemic did it, but a lot of people that were in the pandemic that was sitting still, I can attest that when they were sitting still, their mind was still going rampant and crazy about what's the next phase, what's the next move. And it didn't help that the media is feeding all this extra stuff in our lives and telling us what to be fearful of and things of that nature and to watch out for. But if you can get to that place of where you were at in the pandemic, where you were just sitting still and not having no distraction and nothing coming in and just really, really getting into yourself, like, you'd be surprised. So I recommend that for sure.
So since the reading that day, if you had to pick one thing that was the most impactful that's still working for you now, what would you say it was?
The fact that after she gave me the reading, she said that my purpose is to be a preserver and an educator. That resonated with me and that stuck with me the most. Because you have to understand, like, the craft of barbering, I take that very, very serious to the point where no one can tell me, no one can run circles around me when it comes to these clippers and what it is that I know about cutting hair. But also the education and the history on barbering. Like, not too much people, or not too many barbers, I feel, present that to people. And we're in a world where we grew up where when you go to you only think about a barber when you're in need of a haircut. After that, you don't think about a barber no more. So, and then some barbers, but not all, have this tendency of just, when they're in this space, that you're coming to see me, so I could do whatever it is that I want to do because you're coming to see me for me to do what it is that I need to do. But I'm here to put, like, by her telling me that I'm the preserver and the educator, I'm here to educate everybody on how significant barbering is from the time that it came to be up until this present time and to what it will become in the future. And I'm also here to preserve it because everyone takes advantage of that craft. No one knows, for example, that in Atlanta, there was a barber that became a millionaire in the 1800s, 1900s, early 1900s. No one could even fathom that a barber could become a millionaire at that time, but he became a millionaire. And with greats like W.E. Du Bois and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm here to preserve that and to make sure that that knowledge gets put out there. And just by her telling me that, it just made my purpose that much even more. And I'll take it a step further to be like, they said that they had their own reading to themselves. When Mira said she had her reading and she asked the reader, what's her purpose? I did the same thing and asked what my purpose. And they basically told me that in my past life, I was that person that was like a humanitarian at some point in my past life. So it just makes sense that this is the direction that I'm going in. And for Mira to bring that to my attention, to where when I did go someplace else, what they were able to tell me resonated even that much more, and I wasn't confused about it, or was just like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? That just made it that much more helpful for me.
And then
I think it would be, we'd be remiss if we let the group just think that, like, your purpose is to preserve barbering. Like, it was way deeper than that. It was like who you are, the whole being of how you present yourself to the world, the pride that you take in the presentation, the time that you take, down to how you left your shoes at my door, like how they were placed, like meticulously, how you take your time to iron your shirt or whatever it is, and not be in a rush, and how you present, how it's way more than barbering. It's the preservation of a value system of taking pride in how you present yourself to the world. It matters, especially in today's society where, a lot of that's gotten lost. Everybody's just, especially in the pandemic, everybody's just, it doesn't matter, what you have on. Everybody's just talking over the computer anyway, but you it's way beyond barbering. I just had to say, like, you have an air about you that the preservation really is in just how you present, you teaching others, take pride in how you present yourself, take pride in how you do things and what you do, the method in which you are able to focus to where you are not distracted by all the things that, you are focused on your craft. I had to put that out there. I'm like, it definitely was not just that.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, I definitely take pride in what I do, and my presentation is like how the pride that I take in what I do, and my presentation and what I do is part of the reason as to where I've been able to accomplish the things that I've accomplished in the film industry. And, just a real quick story. I would go, when I started my company, Director's Cut Inc., I decided that I was going to go and groom people on TV and film on set I decided I made the choice that I was going to go and groom them with a suit and tie. And that's just how it happened. No one has ever seen a barber wear a suit and tie to go to work at the time that I was doing this. And this is back in 2010, 2011. You know what I mean? So to do that got me noticed by the late, great Michael K. Williams, who saw me with a suit and tie on and a briefcase and was just like, yo, I like your style. Come and groom me for Boardwalk Empire. And I started working with him on Boardwalk Empire from season 2 till the show ended. And then I went on to work with him up until the last show that we did together, which was Lovecraft Country. And so it definitely was just about the pride, because I just feel like barbering is just a word that kind of limits people or limits the barber, and it's more to it than just barbering. It's just the word grooming comes to mind when it comes to that, because you're not just cutting somebody's hair. You're basically tailoring their haircut to match who they are, their aura. There's a sense of energy that you're bringing to this person when you're cutting their hair, where you're extracting their energy as well. And when that person leaves, they leave heightened and enhanced than the way that they were when they came. And all I say is that I'm enhancing another person. I'm not making them better. I'm just enhancing what they already have. And so that was my mentality. So yeah.
And then
you're
the
right.
chain effect of that is that when you feel good, you do good. So you feel good, then you're kind to somebody else, or you go out of your way because you're feeling good to help somebody. There's a chain effect. Like it's not just the person that got the haircut. You know, you are affecting many other people because you are contributing to their energy field in a positive way. You are shaping their crown. You know what I'm saying? You're making them feel, you're bringing them back to who they really are. The essence of like, you're a king. You know what I'm saying? Well, you walk out there and you act like a king, you know? And they move accordingly, and then everybody's blessed by it that comes within their path. So that's a huge, that is no small feat, and it's a huge responsibility that you wear so well.
Yeah, thank you. So appreciate it.
Yeah, so guys, so you're just seeing the insight to like how she articulates, how she can break things down. Because my biggest problem, and I would say society's biggest problem, is how we could actually even convey a message or convey our feelings, right? Mira is able to feel it, understand it, and assist you in it. You know what I'm saying? Where you can, she can help people find those words. I mean, we sat in couples therapy and she basically just blew the therapist out the water. The things she does with her close friends and how she helps them, and they'll tell her, she gets off the call with them and they're like, listen, this would have at least been like 12 months of sitting on somebody's couch to get to this point. She can do this in like, less than an hour with just simple conversation, but again, the pieces of understanding these reports, that's her bread and butter of how she can make it make sense for you. Because when you get these reports, it'll get thrown on you. You're like, it's a lot of data at the end of the day. So, we're really working on just fine tuning a situation where you need a follow up with her, right? So the very thing that the Vedic astrologer told Sincere when he, scheduled his situations, he was already groomed and prepped for that. She did that already. So I think she really, she doesn't realize how incredibly impactful this gift is, right? Because we're still, in this process. Because she told me next Wednesday, and I'm like, I scheduled it for this week. Like that's how I work. So I dropped the link in the chat, right? Because I want to just get to that because there's more to just talk about, and this segment would just be a monthly segment on just couples, not just astrology. So that's the link there, guys. Grab it. There's 2 specials on there right now. There's a single and then there's a couple special. And again, I'll pay for this out of my pocket, so she's not losing anything. But I'm going to the first 3 people to do a single package and a couples package. Actually, the first 2 people to buy a singles package and a couples package, I'm going to gift you guys a 1-hour session with my wife to, you know, for you to just kind of queue up and ask the questions, right? Whatever you can fit inside of an hour with her is on me, you know, out of my pocket. So I'm telling you guys, self-awareness. I don't care how many products are out here. Everybody's, and Dub, you know, too, the importance of this when you're running a group. In our day one in our boot camp is all self-awareness at the end of the day, guys. If you don't know who you are, I don't care what the fuck the product is. It's just another product, you know? We have to get to a point where you can understand your makeup and your propensities and you know, get to a point of why you were put here. Yeah, that's it. Anybody else? Just looking at some of the questions.
Be quiet.
Yeah, their group is always quiet.
No, I said Champ is quiet. Champ
Nah,
hasn't said a word.
I had myself on mute because I was actually tuned in. It's wild because this call is more insightful than I thought it was going to be. You know, not to you know, no reflection on you at all. I didn't come expecting anything. And what's crazy is my wife is on the call and she actually stayed on the call the entire time. And she's chiming in. So this is like that moment when you first joined us for the first time. And Steve was like, oh, wow, yeah, there's my wife. She peeped in. It's so crazy that my wife is on a call and she's tuned in, she's engaging. And I know her mind, she's super analytical. So her mind is going a million miles a minute right now. And when I go downstairs to go see her, she's not going to say a word. She's going to be like super reserved to herself, real methodical in her thoughts. And then she's going to give me some game.
I won't talk about it till in the morning.
Nah, this is super dope, man. And it's really insightful because I mean, I'll just drop a little gem. My take on all of this was, I mean, I was knowledgeable on a little bit of this astrology stuff and, you know, just being around certain people and they were big on energy and they did readings on their own and things like that. I am a nerd, right? Free thinker, high level is that's my dish right there. So when I'm able to kind of know a little bit about something, that makes me feel good. So as I go down this rabbit hole, something just tells me, you know, not now, this isn't it. I literally put my hands up and stopped. This is when I was in Afghanistan. I just literally stopped. This was probably 2010 or 11. And fast forward, Steve tells me certain things and he's like, yo, you need to download this astrology app. I check this every morning, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, you know what? I'm in a different space where I'm being more receptive because now my table is different. I'm around other high level thinkers and people who can contribute to me. I'm normally the person who people don't, you know, pour into me. It's always me pouring out. So my cup is always empty and I'm recharging myself. So now that the fact that I get around Steve and the relationship, the synergy from, you know, with me and Mira, we went to school together. So it's just so wild how this kind of ties in. And Steve is like, yo, listen, check this out, download this, read it, and just be open. I'm with it. I mean, within a week, I'm starting to see certain things that's popping up and it's informing me about myself. And then it's kind of pushing me into the better me, right? The more advanced me. And then it's like, yo, now I'm able to be more present and be a better husband, you know what I mean? A better mate, a better, you know, father, a better just everything. And it's crazy, but it all stemmed from just me being open and being receptive to new things. And this has literally changed my trajectory. Because me, I'm militant minded. It's firearms and family. That's you know, that's my life. You know what I mean? But this allowed me to kind of get out of war mode and get back into just being a person and just be, you know, just being me and being open, leading with my heart and being emotionally present. You know what I mean? I always had to turn that switch off because I'm in combat mode. But now being home, I'm more present and I'm softer with my wife. You know what I mean? And it's making me better because now I'm more aware of it, more conscious. And it's, you know, it's really dope. So I can definitely cosign. So I was really quiet on this one just to, kind of receive more because it's helpful to me as well. So I definitely appreciate you being here, Mary. Thank you. And sincere, that's super dope. I definitely appreciate you chiming in.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Definitely.
We love y'all, man. That's super solid.
Definitely appreciate it, guys. One dot connect. I'm not like yelling at the fucking world, man. But yeah, listen, guys, just tap in. And like I said, this girl will keep you off the fucking couch. Put it that way. You know what I'm saying? Like I see people, kind of, and I wouldn't even say wasting their time. Talking to anybody is always a positive. But the way she just gets to, right? Because she's not trained for tomorrow. Like, these guys are like, all right, next session, they're billing your insurance and with private pay. Next session. Yeah. She just gets right to it. Like, you'll just be left dumbfounded. And I lived with this powerful energy for a long time and didn't realize that this was her superpower. And at times it's a lot when you just want her to be wife and whatever you get that impression. But her dot connect is crazy. Like her dot connect game is absolutely wild. Whether she knows you or doesn't know you, like once she digs into that reading and you give her, kind of where you're at, and most of us are at an impasse of trying to figure out, especially in these times, like what's next. October, like Sincere said, was a doozy. I literally had friends calling me back to back to back to back. Everybody had a fucking problem during those times. So when you're able to understand how these cycles move and what you're supposed to do within those cycles, I'm not draining myself at that point. I'm actually recharging during those times. So there's a whole art to it. And
How to generate your power. That's really what it's all about. Like, I'm not an astrologer. I use astrology as a tool to navigate and to help me make sense of this experience here. But all of this really is about channeling our power and remembering why we came, because we all came for a reason, I believe anyway. It's beyond what we accept as life. We are not even like cracking the surface. So this allows you to get a little bit more in depth, and it's fun at the end of the day. Nerds like Champ and I, we get off on stuff like this. It's like, give me more, I want to know more. That's what makes life interesting. That's really what it's about. And all of this is just connection. We're all here together, 6 billion or how many of us on Earth, we're all here together at this one time, and this, at this point in time for a reason. All of the synergies and energy together collectively, we're all connected to do something bigger. So we've got to stay connected, right? Sincere, you talked about where, he would call or you would call and he knew. And there's been so many times like the connection, right? Like, I'm like, hey, did you get back to Sincere yet? Where he'd forget, like, I got to call him back. I didn't get to finish our conversation. And then days later, I'm like, you've got to call him back, So we're all in it together. As long as we stay connected and we are aware and responsible with our energy, this could really be something way beyond what our imaginations could even like come up with. We're way more than what the media, the external world will have us think we are. We are not just here to produce, the product and, all the things. We're not just here to overextend ourselves and not make a difference and an impact. And particularly right now in this point in time, I think it's you can't even deny that we've got to be looking for something more, which is why most of you are here in this group. So when the crypto hits and, it's extravaganza time, we can actually have a purpose behind what our next moves are going to be. We can be intentional about how we want to move with our families and our partners and just everybody, that we're amongst, to be kinder, to be more compassionate, to give more grace, to give more understanding for everybody's benefit. But it benefits us the most where, I'm at, he talks about how much peace he gets. I'm at peace that I have the time to not be worried about I've got to get out there and I've got to hustle. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not lost on me at all. But this is why he and I are paired together. We are well aware. So if you're out there and you're not sure why you are paired with your partner, you might want to dig in a little bit. You never know what you're going to find, and it will bring so much more meaning and depth to your relationship. It's way beyond love.
And guys, partner in the sense of not just your spouse or significant other. This is like all things business partners. Like, you run everybody that's going to make some type of impact or any sort of relationship that you're going to form. You could run them through this situation here. But the great part about it is, even if they're not into it and you're super self-aware, and I tell my wife, one of my superpowers now is I'm able to read people. Like, I can feel Sincere is all the way in London, and I could feel something wrong with my brother. And we don't talk every day. You know what I'm saying? And I can do this with every single body that walks within my, that's within my sphere, that I can even put a thought out to. And I'm able to generate that right back. And that's all because of self-awareness. At the end of the day, when I had my reading from that astrologer, it just, I'm a spiritual warrior at the end of the day. I'm into, I'm tapping into the spiritual world right now. This is what I was meant to do. So now I'm more intentional with all things that I do and how I even present things to you guys in the teaching form or the role, and I take it serious. So when I spaz out, it's for love for people. That's it. It's nothing personal against a particular system or it ain't it. It's just, I just know that if we stay connected as people, I don't care what the fuck is going on out there. You just can't deny it at this point. So part of the crypto situation, like she says, is a vehicle. But we already talk about the second phase. We're just, at this point, we're just building, we're building together to make sure that we stay together. And that would be that new community of thought leaders that are going to take us into the future. And I'm well aware that everybody's not going to make it, but I'm going to try my hardest to impact as many lives as possible before this is over. And the wild thing is, if you're not telling your spouse or your significant other, because I got this thing, and I tell all the time, no matter whatever day comes, and I don't care who goes first, we are going to meet back up again, and we're going to do this shit again. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not saying that about your spouse, you may want to reevaluate the gamut, And it's just self-awareness. I'm not saying that we all need to be at that point, because like I said, this is still a work in progress. But we are going to continue to do this shit in the afterlife. And we're going to keep pressing.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I feel that saying that you just said just now too, because me and my wife broke up in relationships and stuff with each other at plenty of times, and I just found myself making sure that we're back together. Like, this is not, like, I don't see myself with somebody else. Like, it's just not gonna work. Like, her and I just, like, so I felt what you said, as far as like I could pass out tomorrow, God forbid, but that's the case. I'm telling her, like, yo, hold it down until we see each other again. You know what I'm saying? That's just the bottom line.
Yeah. And we know that we've done this before together. That's the crazy part. When you really start tapping into, these readings, you realize, like, shit, I've been here with her before, and our children will say that they've known each other before they've actually met in this physical form. And it's just like, it's no coincidence in a lot of this stuff, guys. It's just, there's a lot of noise out there. And when you can tune that shit out and just sit in silence, like, literally I have windows all around me. It was a time when we first moved to here, my wife would come in and she goes to people's houses and she'll just pull up all the blinds, like, let light in. And it gives you a measure when you do go visit people, when you kind of look around and you go into a dark house, and I'm like, I'm not passing judgment the way, like, what she would say, but you do feel the energy, right? And the minute that she puts light inside of a house, it changes the entire dynamic. So there was a time I was like, listen, do not touch my curtains right now. Like, I purposely was intentional on sitting in darkness. Now, they stay up all day, but now I have different things that I'm doing, right? So because I'm tapped into the spiritual, my Vedic astrology, it gave me some things that I needed to do, and bird feeding was one of them. So I literally had 3 windows where I'm feeding birds, and I'm watching these guys operate the entire day as I'm working, and I'm seeing how they're moving. Right? Personalities, like, I probably know all of them. It's the same ones. Who the bandits are, who's stealing everything, who's kind of hoarding things. So just being in touch with nature, and she's introduced that to me too, with just a matter of just getting out and getting the sun, and you know, she's just really big on connecting with that. So, you know, all time, whenever I get to stay here and literally watch nature right outside my window, and that's like the highlight of my day is these birds. You know, slowing down and just being intentional. You know, usually it just be like just kind of walking and you're not really seeing much, but I'm like, yeah, there's this many birds in the world, like right here on my property. Yeah, so it's just it's opened me up to a whole lot of things I would have never been introduced to if it wasn't for seeking that sort of knowledge, and just realizing that, you know, we are just, you know, one big massive ball of energy. And you know, I'm not here to really fuck anybody's day up at the end of the day. I really want to bring light into people's lives. And then just to end on this note, so the same way that Sincere came over and Champ with his sentiments on how the house feels, we have people that come over that are super uncomfortable. So the sun could do one of two things, right? It could give life, or it could actually take life. You know, the rays could actually, you know, kill bad germs and things like that. And I'm not saying people that were in our home were bad people, but we've had some family members, you know, voice how uncomfortable they are in the space that's like, you know, it's almost like you're going to a high-end store and, you know, you don't really have the money for it, and you kind of walk by and it's like, it's not an inviting feel. And it's not that we're portraying it like that. It's just that when people aren't used to a family setting, and I don't know if you want to share the story with your cousin who came over, totally up to you. But it's just mind-blowing of how, you know, what we would deem love could be uncomfortable, you know, to some. And that's uncomfortable for me to even just think about, you know?
But that's back to the connected, the
Sharing. It's just in the spirit of sharing, and no judgment. But and she was just what he was speaking about. My cousin came to visit us, and she pointed out when I asked her, you know, kind of, well, how was your experience? I saw that you were quiet at certain points, and she said, "Listen, I've never seen anything like this outside of TV." She's like, "I've never been a part of a family unit that operated the way you guys do. You guys sit down every day and you have dinner, and the way that you move about your house is so intentional. Your children are autonomous, and all of these things, right? It's kind of like a, you know, for the lack of a better term, like a modern day like Cosby show, like, but in real life." But just saying all that to share that, you know, it is important to share the light, and you know, that's kind of our duty at this point, that we've been blessed with a certain level of wisdom and understanding, and it would be a tragedy for us not to share. And with that, just knowing that not everybody's going to be open arms about it. It's, you know, it is going to seem woo-woo to some people. It is going to seem a little, her word was overwhelming. At times it was overwhelming, that this kind of actually exists, if you will, this type of like family bond and unit when you haven't seen it before. And listen, we didn't come from it. This is all stuff that we're building based off of like what we know we didn't want to bring from, you know, our childhood. And no judgment even on our parents. They did the best that they could with what they had, but we knew that there was more. And then it was all connected. So all of this was in the spirit of sharing. We hope that you gained something from it, or at least at the very least felt the love, and are inspired to seek more. So thank you guys once again for having me. It was great.
Appreciate you. Champ, you want to take us out?
Yeah, man, this was a beautiful, beautiful Dot Connect Wednesdays. We're gonna get this one the number 16. You know what I mean? This is a mic drop episode. Mira, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. We wholeheartedly appreciate you. Thank you everybody for being here. You know, we greatly appreciate y'all, as always.